if there's apartments for rent, I'll just rent them, you know, because it's just it just makes sense. It doesn't require a lot of money and it's fast, you know. So rental arbitrage is essentially a strategy where you can get into the Airbnb investing game utilizing somebody else's hard work and time that they had to go invest, you know, into taking down this property and putting it under their name. So you're flipping the script from like I have to go and like find the property and I have to go buy it, I have to qualify for it, all that stuff, to like I just become the renter and like tomorrow I just take over the control of the property. So it's just a pretty genius strategy. Now it is not the only strategy to take control over a property that you can use for investing in Airbnb. There's a way to just manage somebody else's property, but this happens to be the most profitable high cash flow strategy that I kind of bumped into. And you know, for in simple terms, again, just to repeat it, is you find a property that somebody else owns and you just become the renter essentially, and then in exchange for you becoming the renter, they allow you to not, you don't have to actually live on the property, they allow you to rent the property. And we can go into the reasons why somebody would do that, and we can go deep into that if you want as well.
No, I think that's important. And look, some people might think, well, isn't that a little shady because you're going to rent somebody else's apartment and then you're going to make more money off of turning it around and Airbnbing it. But the reality is that you're renting it from them for the price that they asked for, right? Like
Yep.
they set a price of what they wanted to get for rent, and you're giving them that price. So what I'd like to ask, I guess the question that came to mind is you're arbitraging their rental. They own it. You sign on as the renter. You then Airbnb it. And
Right.
obviously, logistically, you're making more money off of the Airbnb rentals in a month than you're paying in rent, and you're getting to keep the difference. I guess the only question I would have is what happens if there's an issue with your Airbnb renters? How's that handled? And how do you deal with making sure the apartment's okay?
Sure. So I want to go back a little bit
Go
so
ahead.
that
Yeah, take me away.
if somebody's watching this and they think, oh, this is something I could do. This is not a very brand new concept that I came up with or nobody else came up with. It is just very similar to, let's say, if you were going to open up a small business in a retail center, you would expect to open up the store at a retail center, like a mall, and actually make money, right? And then you would pay them a rent. So it's the same thing. You know, there's
Yeah.
nothing different. It's just essentially you're doing it in an apartment. So that's what makes it unconventional, but it's very easy to understand when you use that analogy. I actually use this analogy when I'm pitching owners. Like, hey, do you know how you go to the mall and there's a guy that has a like a a glasses store and they pay rent to the mall? That's me, except I'm gonna do that for your apartment. And I think it's also important to understand why somebody would be okay with it. And I can tell you a very quick story, but in Puerto Rico in particular, we were hit really hard by a hurricane. And what I did is, instead, when that happened, uh, we I decided to take some of the cash that I had saved from my kite surfing school and help out these owners that were actually baby boomers. They were 60, 70 years old, and they had no resources to fix their apartments. Actually, the insurance companies were trying not to pay the
Mhm.
insurance. So I came in and I said, hey, what would it look like if somebody would come with their own money and fix your property and actually become the renter? Is that something that you would be interested in? And what do you think they said? They say, of course, I would love that. So that's literally all I did. It was very unconventional, but it worked really well, and it allowed me to position myself with a very unique offer and proposition that allowed me to scale extremely fast in a time where it just made no sense to do it. But I just decided to go for it. In terms of like, you asked
I
me a
want to
question.
ask a question here. I'll let you get back to what you wanted to say, but this begs for me to ask you: how do you take that level of risk? I think it was Hurricane Anna. Am I right about that? Is that the
Maria, it was
hurricane that
Maria.
Maria? Okay,
Yep.
so Hurricane Maria goes through, devastates Puerto Rico, right?
Yep.
Like
Yep.
absolutely devastates the island. You, real estate investor, JC Morales, kite surfing expert, kite surfing, school teacher, owner, decide to take your own money put it on the line, betting on the fact that these apartments are still going to be in demand for Airbnb, for short-term rental, whether Airbnb, VRBO, whatever it might be. What's going through your mind when you're handing money to these apartment owners to help them do the repairs?
Oh man, there's so much stuff that went to my mind, but one of them in particular, it was first of all, I started this as a side hustle, right? I'm a very big proponent in starting little side hustles, because you never know, right? So I always think about like that's a kind of a way of diversifying. So for me, I always thought about like if I'm teaching kite surfing, first of all, I should diversify and actually hire other people to teach because they I get hurt, I can't make money. Then from there, I went into, oh, maybe I should do a different business with some of this cash. And that's how I stumbled upon this strategy. And I went from one apartment to four in the next 4 years, from 2012 to 2017, right? And then because I saw the model working, right, and generating some cash flow, even though it wasn't like a crazy amount. I think a lot of people get stuck in like trying to get this like crazy returns. I don't know about you, but when you're talking to potential investors, they think that they invest 10,000 and they get 30,000 back. I don't know how that works. So with no work. So for
Yeah.
me, I
If you
was
get shot at when you make investments like that, it usually comes with a high risk of death.
exactly. So for me, it was more like, hey, this thing is working. And luckily, my mom taught me to save cash, a lot of cash. She actually, when I was little, she would match dollar for dollar my savings until I rack it up to $1,000, and she matched it. I think I was like 10 years old or something. She's like, dude, I will not match more. I think you've learned your lesson and you're gonna make me bankrupt. But the point is, I had 100K saved up in my bank when the hurricane hit
Yeah.
for my kite surfing business, and I realized nobody's gonna learn kite surfing anymore. Like this is a freaking national disaster.
Yeah.
And I had four apartments under this rental arbitrage model, and I was sitting down watching a YouTube video from our boy Robert Kiyosaki,
Yeah.
and he said savers are losers, and I was like, dude, you're so right. Like, why am I saving this money? I'm like, well, how old was I was like 20, I don't even 25, 26. I'm like, what's wrong with me? Like, why am I saving so much money? So then I decided to, and then on top of that, I always thought that the real estate business is actually a really noble business where you can actually help out. That's really one of my drivers today. Like, I like helping people. So one of my mottos of my company is like, we're trying to enhance communities, right? We're trying to actually provide a place on the beach for everyone. That's literally what we're trying to do. Like you have class B apartments so that anybody can just rent. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to like find these places. So how did I cope with that? I was like, hey, a saver is a loser, right? If I want to become an investor, I gotta actually put my money where my mouth is. And this thing is working. I have no choice. So I had to burn the bridges, the ships essentially, and I didn't just invest the whole amount. I mean, I invested probably half of the money, and then I invested it when I actually noticed that there was a lot of demand for furnished accommodation. So one of the biggest misconceptions people have about this particular space is that the only way to make money on Airbnb is from travelers and when they're on holiday. That's a big myth. There's actually, if that was the case, Marriott would not have like all these hotels, and the Hiltons would not have all these hotels because they figured out that humans, when they travel, which they travel for many reasons, they actually need a place that's ready to rock and they can just
Right.
come with their clothes. So when all that kind of clicked in my head, I was like, dude, let's go. And I just kind of just saw everything and just like attacked it.
How long after you made these investments did the market start to come back? Was there a drag there between, putting money out to help these people renovate their apartments and actually seeing a return and seeing the travel start to return to the market?
Well, what was really cool is when the hurricane hit, um, because of the investment criteria that I had developed, which it essentially came from I've always wanted to have apartments with an ocean view. Like, I don't know if anybody's watching this. Would you like to have a beach apartment with a badass ocean view? I think you would, right? So for me, it was like, hey, if I like this location because of the view, I think other people will as well. And then I just basically doubled down on that. And what happened was in that particular area, that when the power started coming back, it came back there first because it was the most prime location.
Got it.
And what I found was that if I just had properties in that area, they would be insulated from issues because the government would do everything they could to give power to that area first. So what happened is when you have all these investments outside of the main spot, Isla Verde is the spot in San Juan where what I'm talking about.
Yep.
You can have your place ready to go, but it doesn't have any power. So for us, we got power first, and then my places got full. But
Yeah.
then I continued getting people, hey, do you have more rooms? And then the people that were asking for the rooms were people from FEMA, which they are people that were coming down to help out. So
About.
I had literally 4 apartments and demand for like 200. And then I was like, oh my God, if I just had 4 more, I think I could fill them up. And that was my whole thesis. I think I just gonna double. And it was just beautiful. I had these apartments that needed some work. I had the resources, which was the cash, the energy, the hustle, the people, and the model. And then I had some owners that were, trying to make money. And I just said, hey, I have the money and I'm crazy enough to fix your place with my money and pay you rent.
I love it. There's so many themes of this that you've gone into that are amazing, and I could go in 20 different directions right now. One thing I want to definitely talk about, you talked about your mom and dad. How important, and I also got to meet you. I know your sister works with you, your brothers it was down at the mastermind as well. Talk to me about the importance of your family and the relationships with your family and getting JC Morales to the place he's at now.
Dude, I think I have been extremely lucky with having been exposed to a family that's been extremely loving and nurturing and patient through all my entrepreneur like craziness, because this is all I talk about since I was little. I was always trying to figure out how to open up an LLC, how to make a dollar convert into $2. I was obsessed with learning like stuff. It was kind of annoying to be around me. I think it's still a little annoying to be around me because I'm always trying to figure it out, and my family was like, they embraced that. They were cool with it, and I think that the fact that I had on one side like a dad that was like, super strict, that taught me all the like, had the character part, which is like, hey,
Mhm.
if you say you're gonna do something, you freaking better do it. If you're gonna meet somebody for the first time, you better dress up because you only have one chance to make a first impression, right? If you have a contract, you read every single little word. On the other side, I have my mom like teaching me how to save money. She's like, hey, go and like grow and all these things. And then in my family, believe it or not, all my siblings right now are either they have their own business, or they like, my brother has his own business, my other sister has her own business, and then Christina works with me in my business. So we've kind of all developed into entrepreneurs, and I think family's been it's been a key for sure.
I'm gonna say that we share that having that element of being very lucky. My father started his own business when I was 17 years old. It was a little scary at the time because I was getting ready to go to college and he quit his job and started his own business, but was able to see the idea of like of being entrepreneurial and not relying on somebody else for a job. And I would say that you say that might get annoying to people, but quite frankly, JC, it's precisely the reason that I was so drawn to you when we were in the room together in Puerto Rico, because you are business first, man. It's like, let's figure out a way to make some money. And
Yep.
for those of us that are wired that way, it's like a magnetic thing. It happens quite instantly. I'm going to take us back down to Puerto Rico, and probably the most memorable time I spent on those couple of days with you. We happened to be outside the room
Hmm.
and Pace Morby had walked by,
Yeah.
and I kind of honed in on your conversation. I'm not gonna lie, like I sort of like insinuated myself into a conversation you were having with him. But what jumped out of it, and for those of you guys who don't know who Pace Morby is, he is extremely big in the creative finance space, deals a lot in wholesaling and rehabs for residential real estate, but has become a pretty big name in the education space as well. He was there. You were immediately like, no shame in your game whatsoever. Like JC Morales does not worry about whether or not somebody somebody else might have quote unquote fame. You were having a conversation with him, and tell me your mindset. Like, you went right to him and start a conversation. What's the mindset? What are you trying to take when you go to a person like that and start talking to him?
Dude, it's pretty. First of all, it's pretty clever that you realize that this was fully like intentional, right? And second of all, that you were not shy to come in, because I'm like, I love that stuff. I think it's just like, oh man, I love when people are just on it. I have to give the credit to Eduardo Joy, who was great, a great setup. He set me up to talk to him, even though I've met Pace before. But essentially, and just to give people a little bit of a backstory, when I joined Legacy Family, which is the group that we're a part of, that happened to have the convention in Puerto Rico, the moment I joined the group and I felt comfortable with the leaders and all that, I made it my mission that they have to come down to Puerto Rico. So literally, I was the one that was fully responsible for bringing everybody down, and I knew that this would be beneficial to everybody. I knew they were going to have a good time. So for me, it was more like, I have to bring them down because I am going to benefit from it, right? And I and I'm going to benefit from it because I know Puerto Rico's awesome, and I'm going to make sure they have a good time, and it's just going to be good, right? And when I say benefit from it, is that I'm going to be able to position myself as like the guy that you can come to ask stuff about Puerto Rico, because I actually happen to have done a lot of business in Puerto Rico, and I also see how foreign investors from, like, US and other parts, they struggle. So I'm like, hey dude, if I can help you like enjoy what we're enjoying, I'm all about it. So it's kind of like, on one way, kind of like evil but genius, and with intention of like helping out, because I just see a lot of people trying to enjoy the benefits of investing in Puerto Rico, and they struggle. And I'm like, dude, I think I can help you. But just going back to talking to Pace, um, because I happen to have him on my turf. I really wanted, my goal was to create curiosity and FOMO. That was my goal, right? Which is like, dude, you are. And I had a conversation with him over Instagram a while ago when I launched my Instagram account, and I remember asking him, like, he had this challenge where he said, just name any state, and I will go and like do what I do in any state. And I said,
Yeah.
will you do that in Puerto Rico? And he said, no, I won't go to lizard land. And I'm like, what do you mean? You have a bunch of lizards and iguanas. I'm like, yeah, we do. But he's like, why won't you do it? So he never actually responded there. But then he told me while he was in Puerto Rico that the main reason is because he didn't think there was money in Puerto Rico.
Mhm.
And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, there's actually money. Like, people have money,
Yep.
but the banks are extremely conservative, and we don't have as much products as we have in the US. And I'm like, dude, you are dead on. But that also means there's a tremendous amount of opportunity to take advantage of that. And oh, by the
100%.
way, I did something that was pretty funny. It was like, in order to catch his attention, I said, hey, Pace, do you want me to give you a Pace Morby, like, what is it? Do you want me to drop some Pace Morby shit? And he was like, huh? What? And then I proceeded to explain to him why Puerto Rico is such a great place to invest, because we happen to have the best tax incentives in the entire United States. And I went through like the steps, and Jerry Norton
Love it.
was next to us. And at the end of the 1 minute elevator pitch, he was like, dude, like, how can I invest here? You know?
Yep.
So it was pretty cool. It was awesome. I love Pace. I love Jerry.
That's awesome.
I actually think we're all the same person. We think alike. We're like same way. So I kind of resonate towards people like them.
Love that. Yeah, and I'm wired the same way, which is why I insinuated myself into that conversation pretty
Yeah.
quickly.
Why not?
It goes to another question, which you and I, the reason I've talked to you after we were at that mastermind, like you said, you're the go-to guy for Puerto Rico. When I am anywhere anywhere in the United States, I'm immediately going on Google Maps and I'm looking at local self storage to see what kind of rates people are paying. In our business, we want to see about $168 a month on a 10 by 10 unit. That's like where we know we can go buy a piece of raw land for $5 or $6 a square foot, build new construction. And if we're getting 168 bucks a month for a 10 by 10, we're going to have a profitable return for our investors. And we're going to make, like you were talking about your dad with the one commercial project and being a multimillionaire, one self-storage facility that has $168 a month rents, and you can be a multimillionaire off that facility. So I land in San Juan. I'm driving to the airport. I'm Google Mapsing the self-storage facilities that I'm seeing. Not $168 a month for a 10 by 10, $268 a month for a 10 by 10, which is an absolute landslide win. Now, I've been looking for property in San Juan ever since I was down there a couple months ago. Haven't found it yet, but I'm absolutely going to. Give me an idea. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. Listen, nobody thinks of San Juan and thinks like New York City economy, right? And quite frankly, New York City there's a couple other major cities that have rates like that, like Miami and Los Angeles. But San Juan is up there with some of the best rates of any self-storage market I've seen in the country. It's not usually how you think of San Juan as like a place where people are going to be able to pay those kind of rates for a self-storage facility. What it tells me, and I've since done the research and found this out, is there's simply not enough supply of self-storage in the market to serve the market, which is why the prices are so high. Simple supply and demand issue. I guess my question to you on this, specific to this, is what is it, and you may have already answered this a little bit with the banking thing you talked about earlier, but what is it about San Juan maybe that's made it challenging for somebody to go in there and be able to build new commercial facilities?
I think that it's a combination of things, right? And I was talking to Eduardo yesterday about this, and so the market in Puerto Rico for commercial is controlled by just a few brokers,
Got
right?
it.
So what that means is you have to actually be like a politician and be really friendly with all of them, right? Even if you don't like them. So that's kind of one of the things we were talking about yesterday. Like, hey, even if we don't like some people, we're gonna have to like take them out to dinner, and try to work with them, because it's a very, 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 very small group of guys. It's maybe like 5 or 10 guys, right? And they hold all the listings. There's actually a company that has so many listings, it's ridiculous how many they have. But if you're not playing with them, that's one of the things. On top of that, uh, construction permits, right? So construction permits in Puerto Rico, we happen to be an island, so environmental issues are a thing, and we have a lot of environmentalists in Puerto Rico that could potentially stop your project. So
Got it.
that's thing number two, that could be like a something that's holding back
A
the progress.
roadblock.
I would say on the flip side of that, if the projects are large enough and the government wants them, they will happen fast, right? So that's kind of the approach that I think would be the correct approach, which is like to not go small, and to like essentially negotiate with the government and say, hey, you need this, we're
Yep.
willing to invest in it, but in exchange we need permits, we need
We
we
need
need
help with
ease
that process.
of process. So I
Love
would
it.
say that. And then in terms of the banking situation, we do have right now, we used to have like 10 maybe plus more banks, like institutional size banks. They've all consolidated to 3 banks. And we do have co-ops and stuff like that, but those 3 banks have all of the deal flow, and
Right.
they take their sweet ass time. So that is another thing, but it provides an opportunity for people like you and me to potentially syndicate these opportunities and actually put pressure on the bank and saying, hey, listen, you're offering me 8% money. I'm actually like having people happily giving me 8% money. What can you do? Right.
Yeah.
So this is kind of like when you start working with locals and you start thinking like this, is when you actually the banks open up the vault and they start loaning you money. So it is playing chess. Essentially, you're playing chess. You find the opportunity, and then you understand how you need to approach the market so that you can break through depending on how you approach it and the team that you put together to do it. And that's how the guys have done it. The extra space guys and all these guys have done it like that.
I love it. You said something when we were down there that resonated with me, which is the banks will come in, and it was actually during the conversation we had with Pace. You said the banks will do business with you the minute they realize you don't need them, right?
Yep.
Like it,
Yep.
as soon as you're able to walk out the day, and of course that's a principle that works in business, right? The guy who can pretend like he doesn't need you the best typically wins the negotiation, right? And we all, at a certain level, we all need each other because that's how we make money. We make money by doing deals, but specific to banks, when you can walk in and be in a position of not having to have them, you have a much higher percentage chance of landing a deal that works than in the alternative.
Yeah, for sure. I think also there's a couple of things that go into play in Puerto Rico as well. Is that still today we have the appraisal market and the platforms are archaic or archaic. So what that means is that, like, if you call a broker or even if you call an appraiser and you ask them what's the market cap rate of a particular area, they won't tell you that, right? And then you're like, well, what do you mean? Like, why can't I just Google this information like you do in the US? Because they control that information. So it's like back in the day, they hold it in their pocket. It's
Yeah.
not public. Nobody knows what it is, and that makes it challenging. Obviously, we start learning what it is, and we eventually tell them what it is.
Yeah.
But we're there. And the other side of that is that the platforms that we're used to using in the US for commercial and for residential, such as LoopNet, Zillow, Open Door, Redfin, all those are essentially either non-existent in Puerto Rico or they are in their infancy and they don't really have data. So it's really hard for somebody to come in and just look at all the information you get in the US. And all those things are actually where the yield and opportunity is, which is like,
I
how do you deal with all that, you know?
exactly where my head went to, which is that, that presents opportunity. By the way, for you guys watching, you see the scroll right down there. It has a website. That is a link to get you to the various Airbnbs that JC has. So listen, man, if you want to go down to Puerto Rico, I was lucky enough to be down there on the ocean, and he's right. There's something special about an ocean view. Go check out his link if that's something that's exciting to you. Please, man, I love this guy. He's such a good dude, and you couldn't do any better by going and giving someone some business. Would
Thank
love
you.
to see you guys take advantage of that. Going back to what we were talking about, I just lost my train of thought going there. I know what my next question that I want to ask you about was, which was masterminds. You said you joined the Legacy family. For those of you who don't know, Tim Bratz has been very, very close friends with Joe Evangelisti and Brian Brogan, who are my two partners at Legacy Developers. In fact, Tim helped them immensely get into the self-storage game, which you may not know, JC, but Tim and his crew helped us immensely in we just opened it up in January up here in New Jersey, our Sicklerville CubeSmart. I talked about your family and how lucky you feel about your family and what that's been able to do for you, but why masterminds? What's the draw to you of going and paying money to go into rooms to meet other people?
Yeah, I think you something that's very new to me. Like a year and maybe 2 months ago, I had never paid anybody for information because I thought there was YouTube. And I was like, man, with free you, why would you pay somebody for information? That's stupid. And I don't know how it went about, but I do remember that I had a little bit of traction and success. And I felt like, man, there's gotta be more. Like there's YouTube is giving me a lot of information, but there's gotta be more. I don't know what that looks like. And I remember, I think I watched a video from from Tim Bratz about scaling into multifamily. And then I decided to look for someone in my market that could kind of like help me. And he actually said, hey, it's $250 to get into a half an hour call with me. And for me, I was like, damn, that's a lot of money, you know. And I had the money. It was just like, I'm just, like I said, I'm very practical when it comes to that. But I said, this guy has a pretty sizable portfolio, much larger than me. And I've never tried this. Let's just see what happens. And I get on this call with this guy. His name is Sharif Medawar. which is a massive investor and actually one of our mentors now. And that half an hour call allowed me to unlock the part of my brain where I was like, hey, I can see value in paying for somebody else's expertise. And then from there, I kind of went into trying Commercial Empire, which was like an online 3 day course on how to scale into multifamily, and that was $1,000. And then when I did that, I just couldn't get enough of it, essentially. And what I found out was that the good information is not on YouTube. Like, even though the information's there, um, that's you can't really do a lot with that. You can kind of get to a certain point with that, but you do need to build the confidence in yourself. And sometimes to do a big jump, you some people can do it on their own, and I think all of us have done it, but you almost need kind of like a tribe of people that are already doing it, and you are so close to them that you actually think it's possible. Because if you were just by yourself with your buddies, your family, etc., that are not doing what you want to do, it's hard to do that jump. But when you pay to get into those groups and all of a sudden you see what everybody else is doing, you first of all you think it's possible, and second of all you also kind of feel like, man, I'm missing out, I should do something. So I think that's kind of been the value for me to invest. And then from there, just all the ideas that we learn about, getting into social media, starting a personal brand, and you essentially start learning the tricks of the rich. That's really what it is. Like, I think a lot of people think, oh, rich people, are they don't share their secrets, and I actually found out it's the opposite. But they just don't share them with you because you're not willing to pay to get
Right.
access to the room. That's really what it is. They're just not gonna like just give you all their secrets for
I
free.
think one of the things that I found is that as people get more successful, they get far more protective of their time. And so it's not even
Yes.
really so much about like making you pay them for the information. It's about like, hey, if you're not willing to invest a few grand in yourself, I don't want to take the time to tell you what I know because it's not worth it if you're not willing to take that risk. That's been my experience, and
Yes.
it's costly. It's not, it's not cheap. But on the flip side, I think back to what I spent to go to college and the practical knowledge I took out of that versus going to a couple of masterminds, which is literally 1/10 of the cost of what college was, and which one practically helped me make more money, right? The
Yep.
the masterminds by far and away way more practically valuable to making money. So could not agree with your assessment of that more. This is the Storage Syndicate Spotlight. So we've touched on storage a little bit. JC is by no means an expert in self-storage. You said something funny to me off camera before this started. And so why don't you tell me what your experience in self-storage is to this point?
I would say that our experience is that on our business, we actually had to get 4 spaces in the storage units, and that's essentially it. I mean, I've looked at a lot of deals that potentially investing in. I've had conversations during the masterminds with people that have explained to me how the business works, and I actually think it's pretty genius. I think it's a lot less headache than what we do, for sure. And I think that as a business is genius. I mean, I think that if you have a team that has leverage in that space and you happen to be there, you need to be a part of that. Like, either you have to do it yourself or you have to be with someone that's really good at it. Because the reality is all of these strategies work. It's just it comes down to the team. It comes down to the team that they happen to have an edge. Like, if I try to compete with you in storage, you're gonna crush me, man. If you try to compete with me with short-term rental, I'm gonna crush you. And the only reason is because you spent 10,000 hours on it, and I haven't yet.
100%.
So for
I'm going
me,
to tell you, first and foremost, I'm going to utilize your expertise in Puerto Rico to
yeah,
get involved in self storage. And again, what I love about real estate, when you do these massive real estate projects, there is enough juice for everyone to get a little bit of the squeeze, right? I don't have to cut you out. I don't have to compete with you. We can team together and I can utilize the things you really understand and you can utilize the things I understand. It's the same thing in short-term rentals. Best believe I was actually just down in Delray Beach in Fort Lauderdale with my wife and kids, and I'm looking at apartments on the ocean. And if I decide that I'm going to make one of those types of investments, guess who I'm calling? I'm not doing that on my own. I'm calling JC and saying, "Hey, man, is this a good investment?"
Yep.
And I'll absolutely do it together. So I would just shove in there and say, "You're right. You'll kill me in that space, but I'm not going to compete with you. I'm going to partner with you and
Of
utilize
course.
that intelligence."
No, I think it comes down to like, your mindset. What you said, there's so much real estate in the United States and in the world. There's literally no way one person can buy it all, and it's
100%.
not fun. One of the things I've realized is like, man, doing solo business sucks. Like,
Yeah.
the more you can like attract people that kind of are excited about what you got going on, it's just more fun. Like, I used to think about like partnerships as something I don't want to be a part of. Now I'm like, I don't want to do anything on my own anymore. Like, it's just more work. You know, the entrepreneur usually sucks at 90% of the things of the business, anyways. So you want to surround yourself with people that are excited. It's just more fun. And I think when it
Absolutely.
comes down to looking at opportunities in the vacation rental space as an example, is that, dude, I would love to have an opportunity to take a look at it, just to tell you like, dude, you found an amazing deal, you should jump on it. Like, I've
Yeah.
had people like that help me see some deals in Puerto Rico with no strings attached, and I am forever grateful for them. And at the same time, I've had people say, do not do that, and I've actually told people, don't get into some investments too. So
Yeah.
it's just a matter of like growing your network and knowing who to call, or who to contact to look at opportunities. And you never know where that can take you. So, for sure.
Listen, man, it is 7:43. It's hard to believe we're almost through the 45 minutes. I'm going to go back and say again, and for those of you that were with us last week, I was on the show floor in Las Vegas at the ISS. Um, JC got sick and unfortunately couldn't join us, but worked out really well, JC. I got to go live from the show floor, and if there was a time for you to have to reschedule for a future week, that worked out perfectly. So thankful that you came and joined us again this week. Immense amount of knowledge that I personally took. I hope some of our viewers took some things. Otherwise, just selfishly, I'm really happy that I got a chance to pick your brain a little bit. Really looking forward to diving deep and leveraging some of your knowledge on Puerto Rico. Because as I said, there's no doubt that legacy developers will have a project there sometime in the next couple of years, because the market is just, it needs it. It's like you said earlier about real estate. And, look, I don't need to make $274 a month on a 10 by 10 unit to have a successful investment there. And quite frankly, when the price is that high, the community needs more storage to help lower that price a little bit, where it's a little
Right.
bit more affordable for the people there. So looking forward to that journey. For everyone watching, we will be back next week live. Got a great interview lined up with a woman who has been incredibly successful at multi-level marketing and taken a bunch of that success and is transferring it into the self-storage space. So we're going to pick her brain about why she chose self-storage as a place for her investment dollars to go. JC, certainly look forward to having you back on here in the future, man. And again, before we sign off, just want to say thank you for going out of your way to come and join us.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I hope you guys got some inspiration. Get out there and do some cool stuff and take a little risk, and it's gonna be okay.
Love it, brother. We'll talk soon.
Thank you so much.